What is up, everybody? I am Brad, and I am on the verge of sharing my own personal rankings over the next couple months of the top 100 covers in Sports Illustrated history as far as collectability and potential value. And so this has been a pretty big undertaking. It's something I've truthfully been working on for over a year. And so I felt like because of that, I needed to give a little bit of a prelude and some context into some of the details and into what has gone into this. So first off, I started posting countdown videos last year in August of 2022 with the top covers from each decade, beginning with the 1950s. I just finished up with the most recent decade, the 2010s, here very recently. So over the past year, like I said, I went from the 50s all the way to the 2010s, counting down those top covers. Um, and so what I have done is I have taken these lists, all of these top lists from each decade, and I basically combined them to once again come up with my top 100. The rankings are, I just want it to be clear, there's not any specific formula. They're 100% subjective. They're based on my own personal opinion, but I do want to just kind of share like how I come up with these rankings and what my thought process is. So there's several key factors that I take into consideration when I'm trying to determine collectability and potential value. Number one is the athlete on the cover. The bigger the athlete, the more potential that cover has. Obviously, a Michael Jordan cover is going to have a lot more collectability than, I don't know, an Elton Brand cover. Okay, so athlete is probably first and foremost number one. Another factor is when the issue came out, especially in relation to their career. And so, for example, a first cover versus this is just a random run-of-the-mill seventh time that this athlete has appeared on the cover. Similar to sports cards, and you've got that rookie card that is most desirable, has the most value. That's kind of what we look at with the sports magazines as well. That first cover is going to typically be the most key. Next factor, the aesthetic of the cover. Some covers of athletes are amazing shots. It really adds to the collectability. Just, maybe it's a basketball player throwing down an amazing dunk. Maybe it's a great hitter, in full swing. Maybe it's a football player, going up to make a great catch, whatever. But the aesthetic can make a big difference because on the flip side, there are some covers of key athletes, and maybe it's even a first cover that you would think would carry a lot of value, but the photo itself on the cover really takes away from that. Of course, probably the most common example is the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. The very first time that he appeared on the cover of Sports Illustrated, he was still known as Lou Alcindor, but it was actually a gatefold magazine that you open up, and on the actual outward facing cover, all you could see was Kareem's legs. You had to open up the magazine to actually see his full body there, laying there holding the basketball. So in terms of getting it graded and getting it slabbed and displaying it, there's not a lot of excitement for me to display the legs of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And so that aesthetic plays a pretty big factor. And there also may even be a few examples of an issue where maybe it's an athlete that's not even that huge, or it is a run-of-the-mill cover for someone who was on a lot of covers, but the aesthetic is so amazing that it really increases the value on that. So that comes into play. Age of the issue. You're going to see a lot more vintage issues on my list than you will from the 2000s and 2010s, just because, age a lot of times contributes to scarcity, because so many of these magazines are thrown away and trashed and destroyed over time. It seems to be that in most cases, in many cases, you're going to have a lot more copies still surviving from those modern issues versus the vintage. So once again, we're going to be vintage heavy in my top 100 countdown. In order for a modern magazine to make my list of top 100, it's going to have to be a majorly significant athlete and probably their first cover. Rarity of the issue for example, like the pop counts, that is a factor that comes into play in my rankings as well. There are some issues that have been graded over, 200 or 300 times. And then you'll find some there are still some key covers right now that have been graded as a newsstand less than 10 times. Maybe like a Pele first cover, for example, or even like a Bill Russell first cover. Even when you look at the Muhammad Ali first cover, it's been graded more than 10 times, but when you consider the overall collectability of Muhammad Ali and the greatness of him as an athlete, and then how few newsstand copies have been graded so far of his first cover, things like that come into play. Whereas maybe a LeBron James first cover has been graded, over 300 times. So that plays a little bit of a factor as well in my rankings. And then lastly, I think the last factor that can come into play a little bit is historical context. The moment that was captured on the cover and the reasoning and the story behind why that cover exists, that can add a little bit of collectability as well. So there may be a couple other little things here or there, but for the most part, those are the primary factors that I took into consideration when kind of putting my rankings together. And so another way that I like to think about it, when I'm putting magazine A versus magazine B, and I'm like, okay, who ranks first, is I try often to imagine every issue as if it were graded at 9.8. And I look at them objectively side by side. Okay, if both of these were graded a 9.8, which one would I rather have, or which one do I think would potentially sell for more on the open market? So that was sometimes the way of my thinking. For the most part, I kept my rankings for my top 100 in line with my previous rankings from the decades. For example, if I had I'm just going to throw some random names out there. Let's say if I had a Stan Musial cover ranked at number 10 or if I had it ranked behind a Ted Williams cover in my 50s countdown, I'm probably going to keep it behind in my top 100 as well. I tried not to make too many, too many shifts like that wouldn't match up, but there are some, and that's just because, once again, I started making these decade countdowns over a year ago. And so I have changed my mind about some things and kind of also I know the market really, really well because I track these sales every single month. And so I've learned more about the market and what the market looks for since I started that first countdown on the 50s back in August of 2022. So I did make a few adjustments. So, don't call me out and say, hey, how are you going to have this cover ranked above this one in your top 100? But when I watched your countdown for the top covers of the 60s, you had them flipped. Well, once again, there were a few adjustments that I made based on just, growing and learning more and just a little bit of a change of opinion over the past year. The way that I'm going to share and post these videos is I'm going to break each one into 10 at a time. So for the next couple months, I'm going to begin by posting, I'm going to post one part of the countdown each week. I'm going to start with some honorable mentions that just missed the cut on my top 100. And then I'll basically, go 10 at a time, 100 through number 90 or number 91, whatever it might be. And gradually work our way all the way down to the top 10. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, I felt like this has really been such a big undertaking over the past year plus. And I did put a lot of time and a lot of factors and a lot of thinking into it. But, love discussion. And of course, there's going to be covers you disagree with. And I definitely open comments, open to your thoughts and comments on the different videos and rankings that I post. But hopefully you enjoy it. Hopefully you enjoy the countdown and maybe can add a little bit of context or perspective for you and maybe look at some covers in a different way, or maybe even see some covers that you're still not familiar with. I think it will be fun putting out this countdown. So thank you so much for those of you who continue to watch and support my channel. Really appreciate it. If you have not already, please like and comment and subscribe. And yeah, over the next couple months, hope you enjoy the countdown. See ya.